Good day, Chief here for CTT. Last week, I said I bounced around Charlie, Bravo, and then finally ended up in Alpha Company of the 314th MI Battalion. I think they're now the 717th because the Army every now and then likes to relabel their battalions and whatnot. I don't know why. So I knew it as the 314th. Now, finally get my clearance, I get to work, and they put me in a section where there's already two other warrant officers, a CW3 and a CW2, and a major that I know, a major that I was TDY with in Sarajevo, a couple assignments back. And as I said from my Korean video, we have no assets. So one of the warrant officers, the CW3, was my same MOS, and the other officer was a linguist, and they had already paired up together, and they started writing this paper to create a section that we could use our MOSs. And since they'd already started this paperwork, I really didn't have much input, but they just more or less handed it to me and to proofread it and see if it made sense, because if it made sense to me, not knowing what the concept was and finding any misspellings, which are very few, to present. So I read it, I grasped it, sounded good to me because, like I said, it was going to make me self-employed to at least have input for a single asset, and hopefully I could do some reporting from that asset. So they get the paper written, they get it signed, they get it approved, and of course it's got to go up to higher, all the way up the food chain at this place in order for someone to say, yes, we'll bless it off and you can have the manning. So meanwhile, I'm getting to meet all the warrant officers, and as I meet new warrant officers, I'm like, hey, do you know where Murph works? Who? Murphy. CW2 Murphy. He came here like a year ago. After telling that story a few times, I finally got, oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about. He got here, barely got onto the floor, and got shipped overseas on a TDY to Iraq. I said, okay, when's he due back? I have no idea. That was over a year ago, though. I said, okay. So within a couple of months, Murphy gets back, and he was like, man, I'm glad to see you. And he says, I'll tell you what, he says, I've never gone TDY as an enlisted than I have as a warrant officer. He says, it seems like that's all I've done. I said, yeah, me too. I said, I told him about my TDYs, and he's like, oh, okay. Yeah. So we get a new battalion commander, and for some reason, while I'm stationed there, I'll go through two battalion command change of commands, and I'm late to one. I'm late to both of them. Had an appointment or something. I don't know what it is, but you know, you're supposed to, especially as an officer, you're supposed to show up and pay your respects. So the new incoming, I can't even tell you who the outgoing was. I can't even tell you what he looked like. I probably met him once or twice, and that was about it, because change of command kind of sort of happened like a couple months of me getting there and Murphy getting back from Iraq from his TDY. That got extended a couple months. He wasn't too happy about that. So we get a new battalion commander. This will now be number 2. Yeah, number 2 of the best battalion commanders I served under. I briefly served under one at Fort Lewis, but I'll meet him again someday. So now we get Colonel, Lieutenant Colonel, I guess he was at that time, or was, yeah, I think it was Lieutenant Colonel at that time. Lieutenant Colonel Peyton Smith. That is his name. One of the best battalion commanders, like I said, I've served under. He came in and he counseled all the officers. And in part of their counseling, they were given that they would have to read a military-related book once a month and give a book report on it. Murph was basically, there was about more than a dozen and less than 20 of us warrant officers here all together. He more or less took charge and talked to the battalion commander and said, know where you're coming from, sir, know what you want to do, but I want to propose this. Rather than having us warrant officers each write you a book report, how about we have like a warrant officer once a month training of some kind? Colonel bought off on it, so once a month one of us had to teach something military related to one of our jobs, related to the Warrant Officer Corps, related to the Army. So of course, being there, I think I taught twice in the turnaround that he was there, because he was there 36 months, and like I said, there was enough of us warrant officers that we got to teach once or twice, and then sometimes some guys just love to teach. So that's what we did in lieu of book reports, so Murph cut that off. Murph was also eloquent. There's that expression, if you can't dazzle them with your brilliance, baffle them with your bullshit. Murph was the opposite, because you would take your award, you would take your officer evaluation report, because sometimes we have to prep those. In other words, that means we have to write the greater share of it, because the officers aren't keeping track of what we've done. And then Murph would take that bullshit that you wrote down, and he would use his eloquence and turn it into the dazzle them with your brilliance. So Murph was the opposite of that. I mean, every time somebody wrote something, like, especially among us warrant officers, like, did Murph see it? No. Well, go take it to Murph and then let him. Don't bring it to me. Take it to Murph first. And then when Murph's done with it, bring it back to me or whoever you want to. Well, sure, we'll proofread it again, but we're not touching anything that Murph wrote down. And Murph was pretty good at using powerful words and not repeating them over and over again for different people and their OERs, so that way it doesn't look like the OERs are just the same and just on a rotation, just changing the name and all the other vital information. So we got along good. Now the section that I work for, we did good. Everybody loved our concept, but once we got it finalized and been approved and we got our manning, we got a couple guys from the Air Force, us 3 warrant officers from the Army. We got a new sergeant that came in. It was a hard charger, because we would have almost daily meetings and we would talk about this or that. We got to call this person, we got to contact these people. This guy was writing all that information down, and by the time we were done with that meeting, he was already on the phone calling half these people and organizations to coordinate what we just talked about in the meeting. So he was really good. One of the best sergeants that served underneath me. It was like you didn't have to tell this guy orders anything. He had it done, and he was in charge of the section because he was the highest ranking NCO. And but nice concept we wrote up, but people downrange where the asset was going to do its job, they were like, well, it's in our backyard, so to speak, so we've got priority on what it's going to do for you and me. Meaning for them mostly, and oh, if our criteria fits some of their criteria, they'll have them do that. So it got a little frustrating at times. We did have a crisis come up one time, and that was one of the hurricanes in somewhere. Was it Haiti? Yeah, not the 2010 or 11 hurricane. But there was another crisis that came up and took away our asset, and then we needed to get it replaced, and that was a really strange. We got a plane from one place, from one of the services. We got a crew to man it from another service, and we needed specific language skills, and we got those from Canada, from the Canadian Army, which is really strange. So we did good, and we did super good, and we got recognized for it. But after we set up our cell, the Air Force decided, hey, this is a good concept, so they copied it. So they copied us almost verbatim, but they didn't have assets in the same area. They had assets somewhere else, I think. But miscommunication happened, a visiting Air Force general came to congratulate our section that was mixed. But however, before they brought him over to our section so he could shake hands and pass out his general coin to personnel for recognition of the good job they did, they sidetracked him over to the Air Force section first, and the general thought that this was the office he was coming to pass out coins and shake hands with. So he did. He shook hands, passed out his general coins, and congratulated them on a job well done. And then they brought him over to our section, and he just like, oh, okay, and shook a couple of hands and walked away because he thought, just another section that you guys are showing me. What was really frustrating, like I said, we had a couple of Air Force guys in our section, and all the Air Force personnel over there came over, look what we got instead of you. And I was like, don't do that. Get out of here if that's how you're going to treat it. Well, we know we don't deserve these, but we're keeping them. I mean, no, you don't correct generals. See, that's the sad part. You don't want to make the general look like an idiot or a fool. And that's exactly what would have happened if someone would have said, sir, these aren't the guys you're supposed to recognize. But too late. So our guys, especially the Air Force guys, they were highly upset because their fellow Air Forcemen started, you know, rubbing it in, and they kept it up for a couple of weeks, and it was just getting frustrating. I shouldn't be talking into my cup. But that was the start of me hating the Air Force. Because the longer I stayed here and the more Air Force that I worked for, the more I grew to hate them. I know hate is the very bad word, but that's how I say it, and I generally say it jokingly. And I'll get to that story later on, because I'm going to get into a section at the tail end of my career here where I have mostly Air Force and I think one Navy personnel. And that's going to be a fun story. At least I thought it was fun, because I got extended there thanks to a trial. But there I am, finally settled down. I'm in a section that's actually where I can do my MOS, doing coordination, and plus there's other stuff that comes along that helps us. There is within the workstation itself, so at least we have somebody else that we can ask questions, and if they've got the time of the day to take care of that information, they can. So there I'm actually doing my job, but like I said, once again, I don't have direct control over my assets like I did back in South Korea. And as I said, I'll never have that again. And that will hurt me later on when I'm a CW4. But I'm not a CW4. Excuse me. Not a CW4 yet. I'm still a CW2. I will be promoted to 3 before I leave. Excuse me, here. My coffee gave me the burpees. So, that's it for today. Sorry about the last part. So, Chief out. Remember, freedom's not free. Hug a vet. Hug a